The rain felt like tiny needles against Naomi's face as she sat in her wheelchair on the sidewalk. Her clothes were soaked through, clinging to her dark brown skin in a way that made her feel even more exposed and vulnerable. Around her, cardboard boxes and plastic bags held everything she owned now. 8 years of marriage reduced to trash bags in the rain. Through the large front window of the house she could see Derek. Her husband. The man who had promised to love her in sickness and in health. He was kissing a woman. Not just any woman. Heather. The friend who had been at their wedding. The friend who had braided Naomi's hair every month. The friend who had stopped visiting the hospital after the second week. Naomi's hands gripped the wheels of her chair so hard her knuckles turned pale. 3 months. She had been paralyzed for just 3 months and Derek had thrown her out like garbage. The doctors had said she might walk again with proper therapy in time. But Derek hadn't wanted to wait. He had wanted her gone. "You're dead weight now," he had said that morning, his voice cold and flat. "I didn't sign up to be a nurse. Heather and I are together now and we want to start fresh. You need to leave." She had begged. God, she had begged. The humiliation of it still burned in her chest. She had pleaded with him to reconsider, reminded him of their vows, their history, the life they had built together. He had just started packing her things. When she refused to leave, he had called his brother. Together, they had carried her wheelchair down the front steps with her still in it and placed her on the sidewalk. Then they had thrown her belongings after her. Some of her clothes had landed in puddles. Her photo albums were getting wet. Her laptop was somewhere in one of those bags, probably ruined by now. Naomi watched as Derek pulled away from Heather and laughed at something she said. His hand rested on her waist in that familiar way he used to touch Naomi. Heather wore Naomi's favorite robe, the blue silk one Derek had given her for their 5th anniversary. A car drove by and splashed water from a puddle onto Naomi's legs. Not that she could feel it. She couldn't feel anything below her waist. The accident had taken that from her. A drunk driver had run a red light and hit her car on the driver's side. She had woken up in the hospital 3 days later to Derek standing by her bed with a strange expression on his face. At the time she thought it was worry. Now she understood it had been disappointment. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands. It was her landlord from before she married Derek. She had called him earlier, desperate for somewhere to go. His text was short. "Sorry, no accessible units available. Try the shelter on 5th Street. A shelter. She was going to have to sleep in a shelter. Naomi looked down at her useless legs. She was 32 years old. Before the accident, she had worked as a dental hygienist. She had been good at her job. She had friends and hobbies and plans for the future. She and Derek had been trying for a baby. Now she had nothing. The front door of the house opened. Derek stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You still here? I thought I made myself clear. This is my house. My name is on the deed. You have no right to sit out there making a scene." Naomi stared at him. 8 years. She had loved this man for 8 years. She had cooked his meals, washed his clothes, supported his dream of starting his own construction business. She had taken a second job to help pay for his equipment when he was getting started. And this was how he repaid her. "The neighbors are going to talk," Derek continued. "You're embarrassing yourself. Just go." "Where?" Naomi's voice came out rough and broken. "Where am I supposed to go, Derek? Not my problem anymore." He started to close the door, then paused. "Oh, and I'm filing for divorce. My lawyer will send you the papers. Don't expect anything from me. You're the one who's defective now, not me." The door slammed shut. Defective. The word echoed in Naomi's head as she sat in the rain. She looked at her hands, strong and capable. She looked at the bags around her. Somewhere in there was her phone charger, her medications, her important documents. She needed to organize. She needed to think. She needed to figure out how to survive. But first she needed to cry. So she did. She sat in her wheelchair on that sidewalk in the rain and cried harder than she had ever cried in her life. She cried for her marriage. She cried for her mobility. She cried for the future she had planned that would never happen. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen. When the tears finally stopped, something shifted inside her. It was small at first, just a tiny spark of anger that grew hotter with each passing second. Derek thought she was broken. He thought she was worthless. He thought he could just throw her away and move on with her best friend without consequences. He was wrong. Naomi didn't know how yet, but she was going to prove him wrong. She was going to survive this. She was going to rebuild her life. And Derek was going to regret ever thinking she was weak. She reached for her phone again and called the shelter. A kind voice answered and told her they had space. They would send someone with a van to pick her up. She just needed to wait. So Naomi waited in the rain, gathering her strength, planning her survival. She looked one last time at the house that used to be her home. Derek and Heather were visible through the window again, dancing together in the living room. Let them dance, Naomi thought. Let them celebrate. Their happiness wouldn't last. She would make sure of that. The shelter van pulled up 20 minutes later. A woman with gray hair and kind eyes got out and helped Naomi gather her wet belongings. "It's going to be okay, honey," the woman said as they loaded everything into the van. "We'll get you dry and fed and figure out what comes next." Naomi nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As the van pulled away from the curb, she didn't look back at the house. That part of her life was over. Whatever came next, she would face it head-on. She had no idea that her entire world was about to change in ways she couldn't imagine. She had no idea that the mother she thought was dead had been searching for her for decades. She had no idea that she was the heir to a fortune that would make Derek's betrayal look like the pathetic act of a small, cruel man. All she knew was that she was still breathing. And as long as she was breathing, she could fight. 3 months earlier, Naomi had opened her eyes to harsh fluorescent lights and the steady beep of machines. Her head felt like it was stuffed with cotton. Her mouth was dry. Everything seemed distant and fuzzy. "She's waking up," a voice said. A nurse appeared in her line of vision, smiling. "Welcome back, Naomi. You've been asleep for 3 days. Don't try to move too much." 3 days? Naomi tried to remember what had happened. She had been driving home from work. It was Tuesday evening. She had stopped at a red light. Then there was the screech of tires, the sound of metal crushing, and pain. So much pain. "The accident," Naomi whispered. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "You were hit by a drunk driver," the nurse explained gently. "You have a spinal cord injury. The doctors will explain everything, but I wanted to prepare you. You can't feel or move your legs right now." The words didn't make sense at first. Naomi tried to wiggle her toes. Nothing happened. She tried to move her legs. They didn't respond. Panic flooded through her body. "I can't feel my legs," she said, her voice rising. "I can't feel them." "I know, honey. The doctor will be here soon. Your husband is outside. He's been here every day." Derek had rushed in minutes later. His eyes were red, his hair messy. He had hugged her carefully, avoiding the tubes and wires. "Thank God you're awake," he had said. "I was so scared." That first week, Derek had seemed devoted. He brought her flowers and magazines. He sat with her during the day and held her hand. But Naomi noticed things. Small things. The way his eyes would flick to the door like he wanted to leave. The way he would tense up when the doctors talked about long-term care and therapy. The way he never asked about her feelings, only about when she could come home. By the second week, his visits grew shorter. He claimed he had to work, had to keep the business running. Naomi understood. Money was tight. They had insurance, but it wouldn't cover everything. She told herself it was fine. He was doing his best. The physical therapist was optimistic. "Spinal cord injuries are complex," she had explained. "But yours is incomplete. With intensive therapy, many patients with similar injuries regain significant function. Some even walk again." Hope had bloomed in Naomi's chest. She could get better. She could go back to her normal life. Everything would be okay. But Derek's reaction to this news had been strange. He had just nodded and said, "We'll see." In the 3rd week, Heather had stopped by. Naomi had been so happy to see her friend. They had known each other since college. Heather had been her maid of honor. They did everything together. "Girl, you look good," Heather had said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "How are you feeling?" "Scared," Naomi had admitted. "But the doctors say I might walk again if I do the therapy." "That's great," Heather had said flatly. Then she had checked her phone 3 times in 10 minutes and made an excuse to leave early. That was the last time Heather visited. By week 4, Derek was barely coming at all. Maybe once every few days and only for 20 minutes. He stopped bringing flowers. He stopped asking how she was feeling. Instead, he talked about bills and problems at work and how stressed he was. One evening, Naomi had been dozing when she heard Derek's voice in the hallway. He was on the phone, speaking in a low, angry tone. "I know, baby. I know. Just a few more weeks and then we can be together properly. I'm working on it. Baby?" Naomi's eyes had snapped open. "I can't just leave her in the hospital," Derek continued. "It looks bad. People would talk. But once she's released, I'll figure something out. Yeah, I promise. I love you too." The world had tilted on its axis. Naomi's heart had pounded so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Derek was cheating on her. While she was lying in a hospital bed paralyzed, her husband was having an affair. She had pretended to be asleep when he came into her room. She had watched through slitted eyes as he checked his phone and smiled at something. Then he had left without even waking her to say goodbye. That night, Naomi had cried into her pillow, trying to be quiet so the nurses wouldn't hear. The betrayal hurt worse than the accident. At least the drunk driver hadn't meant to hurt her. Derek was choosing this. The next day, the hospital's billing department had called Derek to discuss payment for continued physical therapy. Naomi had been on a rolling bed in the hallway, waiting for another MRI, when she overheard Derek's end of the conversation. "No, I'm not authorizing more therapy," he had said coldly. "Just the basic stuff insurance covers. I'm not paying out of pocket for something that might not even work." "But sir, the doctors believe." "I don't care what they believe. My wife is paralyzed. Throwing money at therapy isn't going to change that. Just discharge her as soon as possible." The nurse pushing Naomi's bed had heard it too. She had squeezed Naomi's shoulder sympathetically but said nothing. After 6 weeks, the hospital had released Naomi. Derek had driven her home in silence. He had hired a home health aide to come twice a week, the minimum insurance required. The rest of the time, Naomi was on her own. The house wasn't accessible. Derek hadn't installed ramps or grab bars. Naomi had to drag herself up the front steps on her bottom, hauling her wheelchair behind her. The bathroom was too narrow for her chair. She had to transfer carefully, risking falls every time. Derek was never home. He claimed he was working late, but Naomi knew better. She could smell perfume on his shirts. She found long blonde hairs in their bed. Heather was blonde. One night, Naomi had been in bed trying to sleep when she heard Derek come home at 2 a.m. He had been drunk, stumbling around the kitchen. Then he had made a phone call right there in the living room, not even trying to hide it. "I can't do this anymore, Heather. Living with her like this. She just sits there in that chair looking at me like I'm the bad guy. I want to be with you. I want our life to start. So tell her." Heather's voice had come through the speaker, tinny but clear. "You're not happy. She has to know that. She's paralyzed. People will think I'm a monster. So what? Let them think it. We deserve to be happy. Besides, it's not like she can work anymore. She's just a burden now." Naomi had pulled her blanket up over her head and bit down on her fist to keep from screaming. These were the two people she loved most in the world, and they were talking about her like she was trash. The next morning, Derek had told her they needed to talk. That was when everything had fallen apart. That was when he had told her to leave. That was when his brother had helped carry her out in her wheelchair and dump her on the sidewalk like garbage. Now, sitting in the shelter with a thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders, Naomi stared at the ceiling. The shelter was clean but crowded. Women and children filled bunk beds in a large room. Everyone had their own story of loss and betrayal. A woman in the next bunk, an older lady with silver streaks in her black hair, had introduced herself as Gloria. "First time in a shelter?" she had asked kindly. Naomi had nodded, unable to speak. "It gets easier," Gloria had said. "Not easy, but easier. You'll find your way." Gregory pulled out more documents. "Because you're Patricia's only child and sole heir. The Monroe family is wealthy, Miss Bennett. Very wealthy. Your mother left you everything. Her estate is worth approximately $8 billion. The number didn't make sense. It was too large to comprehend. $8 billion. Yes. Monroe Industries is a technology conglomerate with holdings in real estate, medical research, and green energy. Patricia inherited it from her parents and grew it significantly. Your grandfather is retired but serves as chairman. And now you're the primary heir." Naomi looked around the dingy office of the homeless shelter. At her wheelchair. At her second-hand clothes. "This is a joke. Someone sent you to make fun of me. I assure you this is very real." Gregory pulled out a checkbook. "I'm authorized to provide you with immediate funds for your needs. I'd like to write you a check for $500,000 today. That should cover immediate expenses while we sort out the estate details." He wrote out the check and handed it to her. The zeros seemed to blur together. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. "I've also made arrangements for you to move into the Monroe estate immediately if you wish. Your grandfather has prepared a suite of rooms on the ground floor that are completely accessible. He's hired the best medical team in the country to oversee your care and physical therapy. Whatever you need, it's yours." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll come meet your grandfather. He's waiting at the estate now. I have a car outside. We can go today if you're willing." Naomi thought about the last 2 weeks. The shelter. The humiliation. The fear. The feeling of being thrown away like trash. She thought about Derek and Heather celebrating in her old house. She thought about her mother, who had never stopped searching for her stolen daughter. "Yes," Naomi said. "Take me to meet him." Gregory smiled for the first time. "Excellent. Let's get your belongings." An hour later, Naomi sat in the back of a luxury car, her wheelchair stored in the trunk, her few possessions and bags beside her. They drove through the city and into the suburbs, then further into an area where estates sat behind high walls and iron gates. The car turned onto a private road. At the end was a gate with a guardhouse. The guard waved them through. The driveway wound through perfectly maintained gardens. Then the house came into view. It wasn't a house. It was a mansion. 3 stories of stone and glass, with columns and balconies and more windows than Naomi could count. It looked like something from a movie. "This is my grandfather's house?" she asked weakly. "One of them," Gregory said. "He has residences in 5 cities. But this is the family estate where Patricia grew up. He thought you might like to see where your mother lived." The car stopped at the front entrance. A ramp had been installed leading to the front door. Gregory helped Naomi into her wheelchair and she rolled up the ramp, her hands shaking. The front door opened. A tall, elegant black man with silver hair and warm brown eyes stood there. He was crying before he even saw her face. "Naomi," he whispered. "My girl. You look just like your mother." Then he knelt down in front of her wheelchair and took her hands in his. "Welcome home, sweetheart. Welcome home." And for the first time since the accident, Naomi felt like maybe, just maybe, everything might actually be okay. The inside of the mansion was overwhelming. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Paintings that looked like they belonged in museums hung on the walls. A massive staircase curved up to the second floor, but Gregory steered Naomi toward a hallway on the ground floor. "We've prepared rooms for you here," he explained. "Everything is wheelchair accessible. Wide doorways, roll-in shower, adjustable counters. If anything needs modification, just let us know." Robert Monroe walked beside her wheelchair, his hand resting gently on her shoulder like he was afraid she might disappear. "I still can't believe you're really here," he said, his voice thick with emotion. 30 years. 30 years we searched for you." They entered a suite that was larger than the entire house Naomi had shared with Derek. A spacious bedroom with a 4-poster bed. A bathroom with a huge roll-in shower and a tub with jets. A sitting room with a fireplace and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking gardens. "This is too much," Naomi said faintly. "It's not enough," Robert replied. "Nothing will ever be enough to make up for the years we lost. But we'll try." He gestured to a comfortable chair and sat down, motioning for Naomi to come closer. "I'm sure you have questions." Naomi had 1,000 questions. She started with the most important one. "Tell me about my mother." Robert's eyes lit up even as they filled with tears. Patricia was extraordinary. Smart, driven, compassionate. She took over Monroe Industries when she was 32, younger than I had, and she doubled our profits in 5 years. But more than that, she cared. She started programs to help underprivileged kids get into STEM fields. She donated millions to charity. She was the best of us. He pulled out his phone and showed Naomi photos. Patricia at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Patricia speaking at a conference. Patricia laughing with Robert. Patricia holding a baby, Naomi realized with a jolt. "That's me? That's you. You were 18 months old there." "It was 3 weeks before." He couldn't finish. "Before my father took me." James Bennett wasn't a bad man, not at first. He and Patricia met at a charity event. He swept her off her feet. They married quickly, maybe too quickly. We had concerns, but Patricia was in love. You were born a year later. She was so happy. Robert paused, gathering himself. But James couldn't handle being Mr. Patricia Monroe. He wanted to be the breadwinner, the man in charge. Patricia's success threatened him. He started drinking. They fought. Patricia filed for divorce when you were a year old. "The custody battle," Naomi said quietly. "It was ugly." James claimed Patricia was too focused on work to be a good mother, which was nonsense. She would have done anything for you. The judge was about to rule in Patricia's favor. That's when James took you and ran. By the time we realized what happened, you were gone. He had planned it carefully. Fake IDs, cash, everything. Didn't the police look for us? Of course. There was a nationwide search. But James was careful. He changed your name, moved frequently, stayed off the grid. We had dozens of leads over the years, but they never panned out. Patricia never remarried. She couldn't. She said you were her only child, and until she found you, she couldn't move on. Guilt crashed over Naomi. Her mother had spent her life searching while Naomi had lived with the man who stole her, never knowing. "I'm sorry." "No." Robert's voice was firm. "You have nothing to apologize for. You were a baby. This wasn't your fault. It was James's. And now," he took a breath, "now you're home. You're with family. And we're going to take care of you." Over the next few hours, Robert explained the extent of the Monroe Empire. Monroe Industries had started as a small computer parts manufacturer in the 1960s. Robert had grown it into a major technology company. Patricia had expanded into telecommunications, medical devices, and renewable energy. The company now employed over 50,000 people worldwide. "And it's yours," Robert said simply. "Patricia left everything to you in her will. The company, the properties, the investments, everything. Obviously, you'll need time to learn the business. I'll stay on as chairman as long as you need me. We have excellent executives running day-to-day operations. But ultimately, this is your inheritance." Naomi felt dizzy. 2 weeks ago, she had been homeless. Now she was a billionaire? "I don't know anything about running a company," she admitted. "You'll learn. You're Patricia's daughter. It's in your blood." Robert smiled. "But first we need to take care of you." Gregory called Dr. Martinez. Dr. Martinez arrived within the hour. She was a kind-faced woman in her 50s who specialized in spinal cord injuries. She reviewed Naomi's medical records, which Robert's team had already obtained, and did a thorough examination. "Your previous doctors were right," Dr. Martinez said. "Your injury is incomplete. With proper therapy, you have a good chance of regaining significant function. The fact that you have some sensation in your legs is very positive." "Derek, my husband, he stopped paying for therapy," Naomi said bitterly. Dr. Martinez's expression hardened. "That was medical neglect. We'll start intensive therapy immediately. I've already arranged for equipment to be installed in the mansion's gym. We'll do 3 sessions a day, 5 days a week. I'm bringing in the best physical therapists, occupational therapists, and specialists money can buy." "I can't afford." "Naomi," Robert interrupted gently, "you never have to worry about money again. Ever. If Dr. Martinez said you needed to fly to Switzerland for experimental treatment, we'd leave tomorrow. Whatever you need to heal, you'll get it." That night, Naomi lay in the most comfortable bed she had ever felt and stared at the ceiling. It was too quiet. She was used to the sounds of the shelter, the snoring and coughing and crying of other residents. Here there was only silence. She thought about Derek and Heather, probably asleep in her old bed, thinking they had gotten away with everything. They had no idea what had happened today. They thought she was still at the shelter, broken and helpless. She picked up the phone Robert had given her and scrolled through the photos he had loaded. Her mother's face stared back at her from dozens of images. They looked so much alike. Same eyes, same smile, same determined chin. "I wish I had known you," Naomi whispered to the photo. "I wish I had 1 day, 1 hour with you." But she hadn't. That chance was gone forever. All she could do now was honor her mother's legacy and become the woman Patricia would have been proud of. And part of that meant making sure Derek paid for what he had done. Not just the abandonment, though that was bad enough. The identity theft, the debt fraud, all of it. Naomi opened a new contact in her phone and typed, "Private investigator needed. Money no object." She would gather evidence. She would build a case. And then she would bury Derek legally, thoroughly, and completely. Her mother had been a fighter. Now Naomi would be too. 1 month into living at the Monroe estate, Naomi's life had transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. Physical therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez's team were grueling but effective. She could feel more sensation returning to her legs. She could move her toes now. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Between therapy sessions, Naomi met with executives from Monroe Industries, learning about the business her mother had built. She discovered she had a natural aptitude for technology and investments. Patricia had apparently felt the same way at her age. But Naomi hadn't forgotten about Derek. She had hired the best private investigator in the city, a former FBI agent named Sandra Cole. Sandra had been working on the case for 3 weeks and had called that morning to say she had information. They met in Robert's study. Sandra spread files across the desk. "You were right to be suspicious," she said. "Derek Bennett has been committing identity theft and fraud. It's extensive." Naomi leaned forward in her wheelchair. "Show me everything." Sandra opened the first file. "Starting 2 years ago, Derek began opening credit cards in your name. Small amounts at first, a few thousand here and there. You were married and shared finances, so you wouldn't have noticed the extra bills mixed in with legitimate ones. 2 years ago, Naomi said slowly. That's when the affair with Heather started. Correct. I've established that timeline as well. Derek and Heather began their relationship 24 months ago. The fraud began shortly after. I believe she encouraged it. Sandra showed Naomi credit card statements, cash advances, expensive purchases, hotel rooms, restaurant bills. The total was staggering. He spent almost $150,000 on these cards, Sandra said. Then there are the personal loans. He took out 3 loans using your information and forged your signature. Another $50,000. $200,000? Naomi felt sick. I had no idea. He was careful. The statements went to a P.O. box he rented in your name. But here's where it gets worse. Sandra pulled out more documents. Derek was planning to file for bankruptcy in your name. We found the paperwork on his home computer. He was going to claim you had medical debt from the accident and couldn't pay. He would walk away clean while your credit was destroyed. Can we prove he did this? That it wasn't me? Absolutely. I have security footage from banks showing Derek making withdrawals. I have copies of the forged signatures that don't match your writing. I have text messages between Derek and Heather discussing the fraud. Sandra showed Naomi transcripts. Messages that made her stomach turn. Derek, got another $5,000 today. Easy money. Heather, baby, you're so smart. She'll never know. Derek, and even if she finds out, what's she going to do? She can't even walk. Naomi's hands clenched into fists. He said that. He actually said that. There's more. Heather was fully aware of the plan. In fact, she helped. She was the one who suggested filing bankruptcy in your name. She works as a paralegal, so she knows the system. She even drafted some of the paperwork. So she's criminally liable too? Yes. They're both facing serious charges. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. Derek could get 5 to 10 years in prison. Heather might get less if she cooperates, but she's definitely going down. Gregory, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. I've been in contact with the district attorney's office. They're very interested in this case. Identity theft of a disabled spouse is particularly egregious. They want to prosecute. Naomi stared at the files. Evidence of Derek's betrayal laid out in black and white. Part of her wanted to feel vindicated. But mostly she just felt sad. She had loved him once. She had trusted him. And he had done this. Do it, she said finally. Press charges. I want him to face consequences for what he did. There's one more thing, Sandra said. Your divorce. Derek filed it 3 weeks ago, claiming irreconcilable differences. He's asking for half of all marital assets and alimony. Naomi laughed, a bitter sound. He wants alimony? After stealing from me and throwing me out? He doesn't know about your inheritance yet. As far as he knows, you're still homeless. He thinks he can claim half of your dental hygienist retirement account, which has about $20,000 in it. Well, he's in for a surprise. Gregory smiled thinly. Indeed. I've prepared a counterclaim. We're asking for full restitution of the stolen money plus damages. We're also informing the court about his criminal activity. And we're filing for a restraining order to keep him away from you. When will he be arrested? Tomorrow morning. The DA wants to move quickly before Derek realizes you have resources and tries to flee. He'll be picked up at his construction site. Naomi nodded slowly. I want to know when it happens. Of course. After Sandra and Gregory left, Robert came to sit with Naomi. How are you feeling? He asked gently. I don't know. Angry. Sad. Relieved. All of it at once. That's understandable. The man you loved betrayed you in the worst way possible. I keep thinking about the moment he told me to leave. How cold he was. How he called me defective. Naomi's voice cracked. He really thought I was worthless. Robert took her hand. You are worth more than he could ever comprehend. And tomorrow he's going to start learning that lesson. I don't want revenge, Naomi said quietly. I just want justice. I want him to face consequences for his actions. And he will. The law will handle Derek. Your job is to focus on healing and moving forward. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Derek's face when the police arrived. Would he realize she had found her family? Would he understand how completely he had underestimated her? She got out of bed and transferred to her wheelchair. Dr. Martinez had been working on helping her use a walker for short distances, and Naomi decided to try it. She gripped the walker handles and pulled herself up. Her legs shook but held. She took one step, then another. Pain shot through her legs, but it was a good pain. It meant her nerves were reconnecting. It meant she was healing. Naomi made it 10 steps across her room before she had to sit back down. But those 10 steps felt like flying. She was getting stronger every day. In a few months she might not need the wheelchair at all. Derek had called her broken. He had thrown her away because he thought she would never recover. But he had been wrong. She was recovering. She was becoming stronger than she had ever been. And tomorrow, Derek's world would start falling apart. Just like he had destroyed hers, except he actually deserved it. Naomi thought of her mother, the woman who had never stopped searching for her stolen daughter. Patricia Monroe had been strong, driven, relentless. Naomi came from that strength. She carried that DNA. Derek had made a huge mistake. He had underestimated Naomi Bennett. But he had no idea who Naomi Monroe really was. And by the time he figured it out, it would be far too late. The call came at 7:30 a.m. Sandra's voice was professional, but Naomi could hear the satisfaction in it. Derek Bennett was arrested 15 minutes ago at his construction site. He's being processed now. I thought you'd want to know. Naomi sat in her wheelchair in the estate's gym, where she had just finished her morning therapy session. How did he react? According to the officers, he was shocked. Kept saying there must be a mistake. He's currently claiming he has no idea what they're talking about. Of course he is. The evidence is overwhelming. He'll be arraigned this afternoon. The DA is asking for $100,000 bail given the flight risk. After hanging up, Naomi felt a strange emptiness. She had thought she would feel triumphant, but instead she just felt tired. Derek had been her husband. She had loved him. And now he was going to prison. Dr. Martinez came over, noticing Naomi's expression. Everything okay? They arrested Derek this morning. Good. He deserves it. Dr. Martinez had no sympathy for Derek after learning how he had abandoned Naomi and cut off her medical care. Now you can focus on you. And that's what Naomi did. Over the next 6 months, she threw herself into physical therapy and learning the family business. The two pursuits fed each other. As her body grew stronger, so did her confidence. As her confidence grew, she pushed herself harder in therapy. By month 3, she was using a walker regularly. By month 5, she was taking steps without any support. The doctors were amazed at her progress. Dr. Martinez said she had never seen someone work so hard. But Naomi's recovery was about more than just physical healing. Robert introduced her to the key executives at Monroe Industries. She attended board meetings, at first just observing, then asking questions, then offering ideas. She discovered that while Monroe Industries was profitable, it wasn't reaching its full potential. Many of their products weren't designed with accessibility in mind. It was a huge untapped market. The disability community has purchasing power of over $600 billion annually, Naomi explained at a board meeting. And they're largely ignored by tech companies. We could change that. She proposed creating a new division focused entirely on accessibility technology. Products designed by disabled people for disabled people. Wheelchairs with advanced AI features. Voice-controlled home systems. Prosthetics that were both functional and affordable. Medical devices that actually considered the patient's experience. The board was initially skeptical. But Robert backed her completely. My granddaughter understands this market better than anyone in this room. We should listen to her. Monroe Industries' new accessibility division launched 4 months after Naomi came home. She hired disabled engineers, designers, and consultants. She visited rehab centers and talked to patients about their needs. She reached out to disability advocacy groups. The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, they had a waiting list of potential customers. Tech blogs wrote articles about the revolutionary approach Monroe Industries was taking. The stock price jumped 12%. You're a natural at this, Robert told her proudly. Patricia would be so proud. But not everything was perfect. Naomi still had hard days. Days when her legs ached so badly she wanted to cry. Days when she felt angry about everything she had lost. Days when she grieved for the mother she would never know. On one particularly difficult day, she was in her room staring at photos of Patricia when Robert found her. Tell me about her, Naomi said. Tell me what she was like as a person, not just a businesswoman. Robert sat down with a gentle smile. She loved coffee ice cream. She would eat it for breakfast if I let her. She was terrible at cooking but kept trying anyway. She had this laugh that could light up a room. She cried at sad movies even though she pretended not to. She once spent an entire weekend building a treehouse for the neighbor's kid because his father had died and she wanted him to have something special. She sounds wonderful. She was. And she would have loved you so much, Naomi. She would have been so proud of the woman you've become. I wish I could have known her. So do I. But you're carrying on her legacy. Everything you're doing with the accessibility division, the way you care about people, the way you fight through challenges. That's all Patricia. You're more like her than you know. Meanwhile, Derek's legal troubles mounted. The DA had enough evidence to prosecute, and the case was proceeding. Heather, faced with evidence of her involvement, had agreed to testify against Derek in exchange for a reduced sentence. She would serve 6 months and 5 years probation. Derek was looking at 5 years in prison. Gregory kept Naomi updated but protected her from having to see Derek. He's asking to meet with you, Gregory said during one of their regular meetings. Absolutely not. I told him that would be your answer. He claims he wants to apologize. Naomi laughed bitterly. He wants to see if I'll drop the charges. The answer is no. His lawyer is arguing that Derek was under financial stress and made bad decisions. They're trying to paint him as a victim. A victim? He abandoned his disabled wife and stole her identity. He's not a victim. I agree. The prosecution agrees. The judge seems to agree. Derek is going to prison, Naomi. It's just a matter of when. The divorce was finalized around the same time. Derek got nothing. The prenup he had insisted they sign years ago protected Naomi's assets. And since her Monroe inheritance came after they separated, he had no claim to it. He left the marriage with exactly what he had brought to it. Nothing. 7 months after moving into the Monroe estate, Naomi attended a gala for medical research. Monroe Industries was a major sponsor. She had worked with Dr. Martinez to ensure the venue was accessible, with ramps, accessible bathrooms, and seating that accommodated wheelchairs. Naomi wore a gorgeous deep blue gown that complemented her brown skin. Her hair was styled in elegant twists. She used a cane now instead of a wheelchair, though she kept one available for long events. She looked confident, successful, and happy. Because she was. At the gala, she gave a speech about Monroe Industries' commitment to accessibility and medical research. She talked about her own journey from paralysis to recovery. She announced a new $50 million grant program to fund accessibility research at universities. The crowd gave her a standing ovation. After the speech, people swarmed her. Executives wanting to partner with Monroe Industries. Disabled activists thanking her for her advocacy. Doctors interested in the research grants. It was overwhelming in the best way. You were magnificent, Robert said, his eyes shining with pride. Patricia would have been so proud of you tonight. Thank you for believing in me, Naomi said, hugging him. Always. Your family. And family supports each other. As Naomi looked around the ballroom at the successful event, at the people whose lives would be changed by the program she had created, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, pure happiness. Derek had tried to break her. He had thrown her away like garbage. He had told her she was worthless and defective. But he had been wrong. She wasn't broken. She was stronger than ever. And she was just getting started. 9 months after being thrown out of her house, Naomi had business in her old neighborhood. Monroe Industries was acquiring a property nearby for a new accessibility design lab, and she needed to review the paperwork in person. The real estate lawyer's office was 2 blocks from the house she used to share with Derek. Naomi drove herself, something that had seemed impossible not long ago. Her custom-adapted car had hand controls that Dr. Martinez had helped her learn to use. She could walk with just a cane now, though she kept her lightweight wheelchair in the trunk for longer distances. As she parallel parked, Naomi caught sight of herself in the mirror. She looked different from the woman Derek had abandoned. Her hair was styled professionally. She wore a designer suit. Most importantly, her eyes held confidence instead of despair. The meeting with the lawyer took an hour. Everything was in order. Monroe Industries would break ground on the new facility in 6 weeks. As Naomi left the office, she decided to grab lunch at a cafe she had once frequented. That's when she saw them. Derek and Heather were sitting at an outdoor table at a restaurant across the street. Derek looked terrible. His face was thinner, with dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled. Heather looked equally stressed, her blonde hair pulled back messily, her expression pinched. Naomi's first instinct was to leave. But then she remembered sitting in the rain on that sidewalk, watching them kiss through the window while her belongings got soaked. She remembered the way Derek had called her defective. The way Heather had stopped visiting her in the hospital. She crossed the street. Derek didn't see her at first. He was focused on his phone, his face twisted in frustration. Heather noticed Naomi first, her eyes widening in shock. Derek, Heather said nervously, touching his arm. He looked up, then did a double take. His mouth fell open. Naomi? Hello, Derek. Naomi's voice was calm and even. She stood straight, leaning only slightly on her cane. You're walking. He stared at her like she was a ghost. Yes. Turns out proper medical care and physical therapy can work wonders. Too bad you didn't think I was worth the investment. Derek scrambled to his feet. Naomi, we need to talk. I've been trying to reach you. Through your lawyer? Yes, I know. I'm not interested in talking. Please. I made mistakes. I was stressed and scared and I handled everything wrong. But we can work this out. Naomi looked at him with something close to pity. Work what out, Derek? Our marriage is over. You made sure of that when you threw me out in the rain. I was wrong. I know that now. But I still care about you. We were together 8 years. That has to mean something. It meant something to me. Clearly, it meant nothing to you. Naomi turned her gaze to Heather, who was trying to make herself invisible. Hello, Heather. How's it feel to be a homewrecker? Heather flushed red. Naomi, I'm sorry. We both are. Sorry you got caught, you mean? I know about everything, by the way. The affair that started 2 years before my accident. The fraud. The identity theft. All of it. Derek's face went pale. How did you? I hired investigators. Very good investigators. They found evidence of every crime you committed. Every forged signature. Every dollar you stole. The text messages between you two laughing about how I'd never find out. That's not. Derek tried to speak but couldn't finish. The text where you said I couldn't do anything because I couldn't even walk? I have that one saved. The DA loved it. Derek sat back down heavily. The charges. That was you. That was you, Derek. You committed the crimes. I just made sure you faced consequences. I could go to prison for 5 years, Derek said, his voice rising. You're really going to let that happen? I'm not letting anything happen. You did this to yourself. Naomi adjusted her grip on her cane. You thought I was helpless. You thought I was broken. You threw me out like garbage because you assumed I'd never amount to anything again. I panicked, Derek said desperately. The medical bills were piling up. The business was struggling. I couldn't handle the pressure. So you stole from me? You committed fraud in my name? You planned to destroy my credit to save yourself? Naomi shook her head. You're not a victim, Derek. You're a criminal who got caught. Heather finally spoke up. We know we hurt you. But sending Derek to prison won't change what happened. You're right. It won't change the past. But it will prevent him from hurting anyone else the same way. Naomi looked at Heather. You're getting off easy, by the way. 6 months in probation? That's a gift. I hope you use that time to think about the choices you made. You've changed, Derek said, studying her. You're different. I grew up. I learned that I don't need people who don't value me. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew. Naomi smiled coldly. And I learned that karma is real, Derek. You tried to destroy me and instead you destroyed yourself. You were always cold, Derek said bitterly. Always so focused on being right. Maybe that's why I cheated. Heather actually cares about me. Heather cares about herself. She'll turn on you the second it benefits her. In fact, she already has. She's testifying against you, remember? Naomi saw Derek's face crumble. But I'm not here to argue about your relationship. I don't care anymore. Then why are you here? Derek demanded. I had a business meeting nearby. You were just coincidental. Naomi pulled out her phone and showed them an article from that morning's business section. The headline read, Monroe Industries Air Revolutionizes Accessibility Tech. Derek stared at the article, at the photo of Naomi in her office, at the description of her billions of dollars in inheritance. This can't be real. It's very real. Turns out my mother, who I thought was dead, was actually a billionaire who spent her life searching for me. She died 6 months before my accident, but her father, my grandfather, found me. I'm the sole heir to the Monroe Industries fortune. $8 billion, Derek read aloud from the article, his voice hollow. You're worth $8 billion. Give or take. The stock market fluctuates. Naomi watched his face as understanding dawned. You threw away a woman who was worth $8 billion because you thought she was defective. Heather looked like she might throw up. Derek just stared, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The irony is, if you had been even a decent human being, you would have benefited from this. Not the money, but the connections, the opportunities. But you weren't decent. You were cruel. So now you get nothing except a prison sentence and the knowledge that you're the biggest fool in the city. Naomi, please, Derek started. Don't. I'm not here to gloat even though I probably should. I'm here because I needed to see you one more time. I needed to look you in the eye and tell you that you don't matter anymore. You tried to break me, but I'm whole. You tried to destroy me, but I'm thriving. And you're you. Naomi turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Derek? The house you kicked me out of? Monroe Industries bought the property. We're tearing it down to build affordable, accessible housing. You have 30 days to vacate. You'll be receiving the eviction notice tomorrow. She walked away, her cane tapping rhythmically on the sidewalk. She didn't look back. Behind her, she heard Derek's anguished voice saying, $8 billion. I threw away $8 billion. But Naomi knew he had it wrong. He hadn't thrown away money. He had thrown away a person who loved him. A person who would have stood by him through anything. The money was just the universe's way of showing Derek exactly how wrong he had been. As Naomi reached her car, she felt lighter than she had in months. She had faced her past and come out stronger. Derek couldn't hurt her anymore. Heather couldn't hurt her anymore. She was free. Derek's trial began on a cold January morning. Naomi didn't attend the proceedings, but Gregory kept her informed of every development. The case was straightforward. The evidence was overwhelming. The outcome was inevitable. The prosecution presented the forged loan documents this morning, Gregory told Naomi during their weekly call. Derek's lawyer tried to argue that you knew about the loans and consented, but the handwriting analysis destroyed that claim. The forgeries were obvious. How did Derek react? Badly. He's desperate. Yesterday his lawyer tried to get Heather's testimony excluded, claiming she was coerced into cooperating. The judge denied the motion. Heather had been the prosecution's star witness. She had already pleaded guilty and served her 6-month sentence. Now she was fulfilling her end of the deal by testifying against Derek. According to Gregory, she had been thorough and damning. She brought receipts, Gregory said with a hint of satisfaction. Text messages, emails, even a recording she made of Derek explaining his bankruptcy plan. She documented everything. Why did she record him? Self-preservation. She knew the fraud was wrong and wanted leverage if things went bad. Smart in a criminal sort of way. So she's betraying him to save herself. Exactly as you predicted. Derek is learning the hard way that when you build a relationship on lies and betrayal, loyalty doesn't factor into it. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution methodically presented evidence of each crime. Bank records showing Derek making withdrawals from accounts he had opened in Naomi's name. Security footage of Derek at various banks. Text messages between Derek and Heather discussing the fraud. Heather's testimony confirming Derek's intent. Derek's defense tried to paint him as a man overwhelmed by circumstances. His lawyer argued that the medical bills from Naomi's accident had driven him to desperation. He claimed Derek never meant to hurt anyone, he just needed money to keep his business afloat. But the prosecution demolished this narrative. They showed that Derek's business was profitable and had no financial emergency. They presented evidence that Derek had started the fraud before Naomi's accident, when there were no medical bills at all. Most damningly, they played recordings of Derek's phone calls, including one where he laughed about how easy it was to steal from a cripple who couldn't fight back. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Derek's sentencing hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Gregory asked Naomi if she wanted to give a victim impact statement. She declined. I don't need to speak to him. The evidence speaks for itself. The prosecutor thinks your statement could help secure the maximum sentence. No. Naomi was firm. I don't want to give Derek any more of my time or energy. He's already taken too much. But she did attend the sentencing hearing. Not to speak but to watch. To see justice served. The courtroom was nearly empty. Derek's family hadn't shown up. Heather wasn't there. Only Derek, his lawyer, the prosecutors, and a handful of observers filled the benches. Naomi sat in the back row. She had dressed professionally but not ostentatiously. A simple black suit and her cane. Derek didn't notice her at first. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s. She reviewed the pre-sentencing report with a severe expression. Then she looked at Derek. Mr. Bennett, you have been convicted of identity theft, fraud, and forgery. These are serious crimes. But what makes your actions particularly egregious is that you targeted your own wife, a woman who was disabled and vulnerable, who trusted you completely. You didn't just steal money. You tried to destroy her financial future to cover up your crimes. Derek tried to speak, but the judge held up a hand. I've read the victim impact statements from various parties. I've reviewed the evidence. I've considered your lack of remorse. You showed no mercy to your wife. The court will show you no mercy now. The sentence came down hard. 5 years in federal prison for the fraud and identity theft. Another year for forgery to be served consecutively. 6 years total. Plus restitution of $200,000 to Naomi with interest. Plus a $50,000 fine. Derek's face crumpled. His lawyer immediately started talking about appeals, but the judge cut him off. The evidence in this case was overwhelming, Mr. Bennett. You're not going to win on appeal. My advice is to accept responsibility for your actions and use your prison time for reflection and rehabilitation. As the bailiffs led Derek away in handcuffs, he finally saw Naomi sitting in the back. Their eyes met for a brief moment. She saw desperation, anger, and something that might have been regret in his expression. She felt nothing. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. News of the trial had spread, especially once Derek's lawyer had stupidly mentioned in court that the victim was the Monroe Industries heiress. Now the press wanted comments. Gregory handled them. Ms. Monroe is satisfied with the outcome. Justice has been served. She hopes this case demonstrates that identity theft and fraud have serious consequences, no matter who the victim is. A reporter shouted a question. Ms. Monroe, do you have any message for your ex-husband? Naomi paused, considering. Then she stepped up to the microphones. I don't think about Derek Bennett anymore. He made his choices. Now he has to live with the consequences. My focus is on moving forward and building a life that honors my mother's legacy. Will you forgive him? That's between Derek and his conscience. I've moved on. The headline in the next day's paper read, Monroe heir shows no mercy to fraudster ex-husband. The article detailed the entire saga, from Derek abandoning his disabled wife to Naomi's discovery of her inheritance to Derek's crimes and conviction. Public opinion was overwhelmingly on Naomi's side. Social media exploded with support. Memes mocked Derek for fumbling the bag so badly he fumbled $8 billion. Think pieces were written about men who abandoned disabled partners. The story went viral. Derek's construction business, which had barely been hanging on, completely collapsed. His former clients canceled contracts. No one wanted to be associated with the man who stole from his paralyzed wife. Heather fared slightly better, but her life was still ruined. She lost her paralegal job. Her reputation in the legal community was destroyed. She ended up moving to another state to escape the scrutiny. Meanwhile, Naomi's life continued to improve. The accessible technology division at Monroe Industries was thriving. She had launched 3 new products in the past month, all designed with input from the disability community. The response had been incredible. She had also started a foundation in her mother's name. The Patricia Monroe Foundation provided grants for medical care, assistive devices, and job training for people with disabilities. It was already helping hundreds of people. One evening, Naomi sat in her grandfather's study, reviewing foundation applications. Robert came in with 2 cups of tea and sat down beside her. You did a good thing today, he said, showing up to the sentencing. Facing him. I needed to see it through. To close that chapter. And is it closed? Naomi thought about it. Yes. Derek can't hurt me anymore. He's not part of my life. I barely think about him. Good. You deserve to move forward without that weight on your shoulders. I keep thinking about what Mom would think about all this. About Derek, about the trial, about everything. Robert smiled. Patricia would be proud of you. Not because you got revenge, but because you stood up for yourself. Because you demanded justice. Because you didn't let cruelty break you. That's the Monroe way. Tell me more about her, Naomi said. I want to know everything. So Robert did. He spent the evening sharing stories about Patricia. About her kindness and her strength. About how she had built an empire while never forgetting to be human. About how she had never given up hope of finding her stolen daughter. She would have loved you so much, Robert said, his eyes misty. She would have been so proud of the woman you've become. I wish I could have known her. You do know her. You're her daughter. You carry her strength, her intelligence, her compassion. Every time you help someone through your foundation, every time you stand up for what's right, that's Patricia living through you. Naomi wiped away tears. I'm going to make her proud. I'm going to build something amazing. Not just for me, but for everyone who needs help. Everyone who's been thrown away like I was. You already have, sweetheart. You already have. Spring arrived at the Monroe estate with an explosion of flowers. Naomi spent her mornings walking through the gardens without her cane, something that still amazed her every time. The doctors had told her that full recovery was rare, but she had beaten the odds. She could run now. She could dance. Her mobility was at 90% of what it had been before the accident. "You're a miracle," Dr. Martinez told her during their monthly checkup. "I've never seen someone work this hard or recover this completely." "I had good motivation," Naomi replied. "And excellent care. And inner strength. That matters most." Naomi's role at Monroe Industries had expanded significantly. She was now VP of the Accessibility Division, which had become one of the company's most profitable branches. Under her leadership, they had launched 5 products, all of which were selling beyond projections. But more importantly, they were changing lives. Naomi received letters every day from people thanking her. Parents whose disabled children could now attend regular schools thanks to Monroe's accessible tablets. Veterans who had lost limbs and were using Monroe's advanced prosthetics. Elderly people who could stay in their homes longer thanks to voice-controlled smart home systems. "We're not just making money," Naomi told the board during a presentation. "We're making a difference. And there's still so much more we can do." She proposed expanding into adaptive sports equipment, accessible vehicles, and medical devices. The board approved every initiative. Under Naomi's guidance, Monroe Industries was becoming a leader in disability innovation. One afternoon, Naomi was touring the new Accessibility Design Lab, the facility built on the site of her old house with Derek. The building was state-of-the-art, with spaces specifically designed for engineers with various disabilities to work comfortably. Wide hallways, adjustable desks, perfect acoustics, and more. An architect named Julian Foster was giving her the final walkthrough. He was tall, with warm brown skin and kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. Naomi had worked with him on the building's design, and she had been impressed by his thoughtfulness. "We installed the sensory-friendly quiet rooms you requested," Julian said, showing her a space with soft lighting and sound-dampening walls. "For employees who need a break from stimulation. It's perfect. You really listened to what our team needed. That's the job. Good design isn't about making something look pretty. It's about making it work for the people who use it." He smiled. "You taught me that." Naomi felt a flutter in her chest. Julian had been nothing but professional during their months of collaboration, but there was something about him that made her feel seen. Not as the Monroe heir or the disabled woman who had overcome tragedy. Just as Naomi. "I'd love to get your input on another project," Naomi said. "We're developing accessible housing prototypes. Homes that are beautiful and functional for people with mobility issues, visual impairments, cognitive disabilities, all of it. I'd be honored to work with you on that." They discussed the project over coffee in the lab's cafe. Julian asked thoughtful questions about what features mattered most. He took notes. He shared his own ideas about universal design principles. The conversation flowed naturally, professionally, but with an undercurrent of something more. "Can I ask you something personal?" Julian said after a pause. "Sure. How do you do it? Carry all this responsibility? You run a billion-dollar division, oversee a major foundation, and you're still recovering from a serious injury. How do you not burn out?" Naomi considered the question. "I think about my mother. She built this company while searching for me. She never gave up hope. If she could carry that pain and still succeed, I can handle some busy days. Your mother must have been an incredible woman." "She was. I wish I had known her. I'm sorry you didn't get that chance." Julian's sympathy felt genuine, not pitying. "But it sounds like you're honoring her legacy beautifully." Over the next few weeks, Naomi and Julian worked closely on the housing project. He came to the estate for meetings. They had working lunches. They exchanged texts about design ideas. Naomi found herself looking forward to seeing him, enjoying his company in a way that had nothing to do with business. One evening, after a particularly productive meeting, Julian hesitated before leaving. "Would you like to have dinner sometime?" "Not a work meeting. Just dinner." Naomi's heart skipped. "Like a date? If you're interested. No pressure. I just really enjoy your company, and I'd like to get to know you better outside of work." She should probably say no. It could complicate their professional relationship. But when she looked at Julian's hopeful expression, she couldn't bring herself to turn him down. "I'd like that," she said. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant. Julian had called ahead to make sure the restaurant was accessible, a thoughtfulness that touched Naomi. They talked about everything except work. His family, her grandfather, their favorite books and movies, their dreams for the future. "I have to admit something," Julian said over dessert. "I didn't know you were the Monroe heir when we first met. I found out later and I was shocked." "Does it bother you?" "No." "Well, it's intimidating. You're one of the richest women in the world. I'm just an architect. You're an amazing architect who designs spaces that actually work for people. That's more valuable than money. I like you, Naomi. Not because of your money or your name. I like you because you're smart and driven and kind. Because you care about making the world better. Because you laugh at my terrible jokes. Naomi smiled. Your jokes are pretty terrible. See? Most people are too polite to say that. They started dating seriously. Julian was patient and understanding about Naomi's busy schedule and occasional medical appointments. He never made her feel weak or broken. Instead, he treated her disability as just one part of who she was, no more defining than her eye color. One day, Naomi took Julian to visit her mother's grave. She hadn't told many people about Patricia, but she wanted Julian to understand this part of her life. I come here every week, Naomi said, standing at the elegant headstone. I tell her about the foundation, the company, everything. I know she can't hear me, but it helps. Julian stood quietly beside her, offering silent support. I wish she could meet you, Naomi continued. I think she would have liked you. I wish I could have met her too. She raised an incredible daughter, even if she wasn't there to see you grow up. 3 months into their relationship, Julian asked Naomi to meet his family. His parents were warm and welcoming, treating Naomi like any other girlfriend their son had brought home. His mother pulled Naomi aside at one point and said, "My son is head over heels for you. I haven't seen him this happy in years." "I'm pretty crazy about him too," Naomi admitted. That evening as Julian drove Naomi home, he was nervous. "There's something I need to tell you." Naomi's stomach tightened. "Okay. When I first agreed to work on your project, I had no idea who you were. I looked you up after our first meeting because I wanted to know more about the company. That's when I found the articles about your accident, about Derek, about everything you went through. Oh. I almost turned down the project because I didn't want you to think I was interested in you for your money. But then I met you and you were brilliant and passionate about the work. And I realized that your wealth is just part of your story. It doesn't define you. Why are you telling me this now?" Julian pulled the car over and turned to face her. "Because I'm falling in love with you and I need you to know it's really you I love. Not the Monroe heir or the successful executive or any of that. Just Naomi. The woman who brings me coffee with too much sugar. Who gets excited about accessible door handles. Who talks to her mother's grave because it makes her feel connected. That's who I love." Tears filled Naomi's eyes. "I love you too." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And for the first time since the accident, Naomi felt complete. Not because a man loved her, but because she had found someone who saw her fully and loved her anyway. That night, lying in bed at the estate, Naomi thought about how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been sitting in the rain, broken and abandoned. Now she was successful, loved and happy. She had found her family. She had built a career. She had made a difference in thousands of lives. Derek had tried to destroy her, but he had actually freed her. If he hadn't thrown her out, she might never have been found by the Monroe family. She might never have discovered her true potential. She might never have met Julian. Sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you becomes the doorway to your best life. 1 year after Derek's sentencing, Naomi stood at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Monroe estate. 500 people filled the room, all gathered for the first annual Patricia Monroe Foundation Gala. The event had sold out in 3 days, raising over $10 million for disability services. "A year ago I was homeless," Naomi said into the microphone. The room fell silent. "I was sitting in a wheelchair in the rain, thrown out by my husband, with nowhere to go and no hope. Tonight, I stand before you as the head of a foundation that has helped over 5,000 people access the care and support they deserve." Applause filled the room. "My mother, Patricia Monroe, spent her life searching for me after my father kidnapped me as a baby. She never gave up hope. She never stopped fighting. And though I never got to meet her, I carry her strength with me every day. This foundation is her legacy. Every person we help is a tribute to her determination and love." Naomi went on to detail the foundation's accomplishments. Medical grants that helped people afford necessary treatments. Job training programs that helped disabled people enter the workforce. Advocacy work that pushed for better accessibility laws. It had been a remarkable year. After the speech, Naomi mingled with guests. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities, and disability advocates all wanted to talk to her. But the conversations she valued most were with the people who had been helped by the foundation. A young woman who got a prosthetic leg. A man who received a service dog. A teenager who got a scholarship to college. "You changed my life," the teenager said, tears in his eyes. I didn't think I could go to college in a wheelchair. Your foundation showed me I could. You were always capable, Naomi told him. We just helped remove some barriers. Julian appeared at her elbow, looking handsome in his tuxedo. You were amazing up there. Thank you for being here. Always. He squeezed her hand. There's someone who wants to meet you. She's been waiting patiently for 20 minutes. The someone was an elderly woman in a wheelchair. She had kind eyes and a warm smile. Miss Monroe? I'm Grace. I wanted to thank you personally. Your foundation paid for my adaptive equipment so I could stay in my home instead of going to a nursing home. You gave me back my independence. Naomi knelt down to be at eye level with Grace. I'm so glad we could help. No one should lose their independence. You're a blessing, Grace said, taking Naomi's hands. Your mama would be so proud of you. Those words stayed with Naomi throughout the evening. Patricia would be proud. She had to believe that. Near the end of the night, Gregory approached with news. Derek Bennett's mother is here. She's asking to speak with you. Naomi's first instinct was to refuse. But curiosity won out. Where is she? Mrs. Bennett was waiting in a small sitting room. She looked older than Naomi remembered, worn down by the shame of her son's crimes. She stood when Naomi entered. Thank you for seeing me, Mrs. Bennett said nervously. What do you want? Derek is up for parole review in 6 months. He's been a model prisoner. He's taking classes, seeing a therapist, working on himself. I know it doesn't change what he did, but he's trying to be better. Good for him. He wanted me to ask you, he's hoping you might write a letter supporting his early release. Naomi stared at her in disbelief. You want me to help him get out early? He's suffered enough. 5 more years is too long. He's learned his lesson. Has he? Naomi crossed her arms. Did he ask you to tell me he's sorry? Did he express any remorse for what he did to me? Mrs. Bennett hesitated. He's working on that with his therapist. So no, he's not sorry. He's just tired of being in prison. Naomi shook her head. Mrs. Bennett, I understand you love your son. But Derek committed serious crimes. He stole from me. He abandoned me when I was disabled and vulnerable. He tried to destroy my credit to cover his tracks. And when he got caught, he showed no remorse. He was under pressure. Everyone faces pressure. Not everyone commits fraud. Derek made choices, bad choices, and now he's facing the consequences. That's how justice works. Please. He's my son. And I was his wife. That didn't stop him from throwing me out like garbage. Naomi softened slightly. I'm sorry for your pain. I really am. But I won't help Derek avoid the consequences of his actions. He needs to serve his full sentence. Maybe then he'll actually learn something. Mrs. Bennett's face crumpled. You've become so cold. So heartless. I thought you were better than this. I'm not cold. I'm just not a doormat anymore. Naomi moved toward the door. Derek taught me that. He showed me what happens when you're too trusting, too forgiving, too soft. So if I'm harder now, he has himself to thank. He didn't mean to hurt you that badly. Yes, he did. He knew exactly what he was doing. Naomi opened the door. Goodbye, Mrs. Bennett. I hope Derek uses his time in prison wisely. But his rehabilitation is not my responsibility. After Mrs. Bennett left, Julian found Naomi standing alone on the balcony, looking out at the gardens. You okay? Derek's mother wanted me to help him get early release. What did you tell her? No. Naomi leaned against Julian. Is that wrong? Am I being petty? No. You're being fair. Derek committed crimes and is serving an appropriate sentence. You don't owe him anything, especially not mercy he never showed you. Sometimes I wonder if I should forgive him. Move on completely. Forgiving him and helping him avoid consequences are two different things. You can forgive him in your heart without rescuing him from his own actions. Naomi nodded. Julian was right. She had moved on. She rarely thought about Derek anymore. But that didn't mean she needed to help him escape justice. 6 months later, Naomi received news that Derek's parole had been denied. He would serve his full sentence. The parole board cited his lack of remorse and the severity of his crimes. Naomi felt a sense of closure at the news. Meanwhile, her own life continued to flourish. The accessibility division at Monroe Industries was now worth over $2 billion. They had expanded into 6 countries. Naomi had been featured on the cover of major business magazines as one of the most innovative executives of her generation. The Patricia Monroe Foundation had helped over 10,000 people. They had lobbied successfully for new accessibility laws. They had funded research into spinal cord injury treatment. They had changed lives. And then there was Julian. One evening, as they walked through the estate gardens, he stopped at a fountain surrounded by roses. "Naomi, I need to ask you something." She turned to find him on one knee, holding a ring. "You've changed my life in every way possible. You've made me a better person, a better architect, a better man. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Naomi's face. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." The wedding was 6 months later. Small and intimate, just family and close friends. Robert walked Naomi down the aisle, tears streaming down his face. "Patricia would have loved this day," he whispered. Naomi wore her mother's wedding veil, the one Patricia had worn when she married Naomi's father. It was something borrowed from a woman she never knew but felt connected to every day. As she and Julian exchanged vows, Naomi thought about how far she had come. From that rainy sidewalk where Derek had abandoned her to this beautiful moment, surrounded by love. "I promise to stand by you in sickness and in health," Julian said, and Naomi knew he meant it. He had already proven it in 1,000 small ways. "I promise to build a life with you based on respect, trust, and love," Naomi said. "The way a marriage should be." After the ceremony, during the reception, Robert pulled Naomi aside. "I have something for you. Something of your mother's." He handed her a letter in a sealed envelope. "Patricia wrote this shortly before she died. She wrote it for you, hoping we'd find you someday." With shaking hands, Naomi opened the letter. "My dearest Naomi," it began. "If you're reading this, it means we found you. It means my father succeeded where I failed. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there to see you grow up, to hold you, to tell you I love you. Know that I never stopped searching. Not for one day. You were always in my heart. I hope you've had a good life. I hope you've been loved and safe and happy. I hope you've discovered your own strength, because you come from a line of strong women. My mother, my grandmother, and now you. Whatever happens, know that you are valued. You are important. You are enough just as you are. Build a life that makes you proud. Help others when you can. Love deeply and fearlessly. And know that I'm so proud to be your mother, even if I couldn't be there to watch you grow. All my love always, Mom." Naomi clutched the letter to her chest and sobbed. Julian held her as she cried, not trying to fix it, just being present. "She loved you," he said softly. "She never stopped loving you. I wish I could have told her I loved her too. She knows. Somehow she knows." A year later, Naomi stood in her office at Monroe Industries, looking out at the city. She was CEO now. Robert had retired, confident that the company was in good hands. Under Naomi's leadership, Monroe Industries had become the leader in accessible technology worldwide. Her office walls were covered with photos. Patricia accepting awards. Robert cutting ribbons. Naomi speaking at conferences. Julian and her on their wedding day. The faces of people helped by the foundation. There was one more photo, smaller than the others. It showed a woman sitting in a wheelchair in the rain, her belongings scattered around her. Naomi had found it in a news article about the drunk driver who hit her. She kept it as a reminder. That woman had felt broken. She had felt worthless. She had believed her life was over. But she had been wrong. Her life hadn't ended on that sidewalk. It had begun. Naomi had built an empire. Not just of money and success, but of purpose and meaning. She had honored her mother's legacy. She had helped thousands of people. She had found love and family and happiness. Derek had tried to destroy her. He had called her defective and thrown her away. And in doing so, he had set her free to become who she was always meant to be. The best revenge, Naomi had learned, wasn't destroying your enemies. It was building a life so fulfilling, so purposeful, so joyful that they became irrelevant. Derek was in prison, his reputation destroyed, his life in shambles. Heather was working a minimum wage job in another state, her legal career over. They had both gotten exactly what they deserved. And Naomi? She had everything she never knew she wanted. Success, family, love, and purpose. She picked up her phone and called Julian. "Hey, want to grab lunch?" "Always. Meet you in 30? "Perfect. I love you." "I love you too." As Naomi gathered her things, she glanced one more time at the photo of herself in the rain. That woman had been afraid. But she had also been strong enough to survive. Strong enough to rebuild. Strong enough to thrive. "Thank you," Naomi whispered to her past self. "Thank you for not giving up." Then she walked out of her office, ready to face whatever came next. Because she was Naomi Monroe, daughter of Patricia, heir to an empire, builder of futures. And her story was just beginning.